To everyone watching who used to play League a long time ago but has since quit, let me ask you a question. What champions can you normally expect to find in bot lane? Ashe, Ezreal, Kai'Sa, Jhin, maybe the occasional Draven or Lucian? Sure, you still definitely run into those champions, but let's dive a bit deeper into the question. If I were to ask you what champions are currently successful in bot lane, what would be your guesses? Jinx, Twitch, Tristana? Oh, well, well my friend, take a look at this. Not exactly what you were expecting, were you? Throughout the course of Season 16, mages have gone from a situational yet viable pick into a dominating force in bot lane, an occurrence made even more salient with the recent MSI 2026, where we bore witness to a considerable number of mages being picked up by the best AD carry players in the world. As a class, while marksmen by and large are still the most popular by pick rate, mages presently have a near stranglehold over the role if we go by win rate, with a vast majority if not all of them carrying win rates north of 52%. I made a video on AP bot laners a couple years back, but I figure it's good to make a more recent episode on account of the unique circumstances that led to a more prominent showing from them recently. Today we're gonna break down exactly just what happened that enabled the mage archetype to take control of the bot lane meta in Season 16. Like I said before, mages have been a thing in bot lane for a while now. Beginning around Season 7 or 8, it wasn't out of the question for you to see the occasional Ziggs, Karthus maybe swaying bot lane. Fast forward to today though, and you see close to a dozen potential candidates not only being played in bot lane, but finding immense success doing so. Karthus, Victor, Seraphine, Hui, Veigar, Syndra, Aurelion Sol, vel'koz, Lux, Swain, Ziggs, Cassiopeia, Xerath, Brand, Vladimir, Mel. You see more mages being played in bot lane than mid lane at this point. Considering the extensive, almost dogmatic expectations of bot lane in that every team is expected to have at least one consistent DPS champion, which defines the marksman class's one and only existence, how do we arrive at a point where mages are doing their job better than them when characteristically they don't inherently possess the attributes necessary to supplant them? The answer is a multitude of reasons that coincided to orchestrate the perfect circumstances for these champions to thrive. First and foremost, mages were primarily picked in mid lane up until recently because of three factors. 1. Mid lane is the shortest lane by length, and with most mages being immobile, not having to extend very far to CS makes it more difficult for them to get ganked, as well as, and more crucially in my opinion, they can recall and make their way back to mid significantly faster than top or bot. 2. It's a solo lane. Simply by virtue of being ranged, mages can operate at a far higher safety margin than their peers, giving them a safe path to mid game where they can contribute most of their pressure. With only one opponent to worry about, their lack of consistent DPS in the early game matters a lot less. 3. Mid lane is the most tempo convenient lane, especially for immobile champions. By going top or bot lane, you have to commit significantly more time to rotate to an objective on the opposite side of the map, which if an immobile mage attempts to do that, you stand to lose more than you stand to gain. But in mid lane, you're in a position to roam to objectives or participate in a skirmish for a lot less walking time. For the longest time ever, mages were almost exclusively played mid by way of the conditions being most favorable for them there. That being said, a couple of things do contribute to them potentially being serviceable down in bot lane. For one, their ranged AoE damage enables them to effectively pressure two opponents as they can one. That same AoE can also give them a decent time pushing waves, especially when compared to marksmen who don't have the same wave clear in the early to match. Secondly, supports can be a massive benefit for mages to keep their targets in place. In the mid lane, now more than ever I feel, champions are just too slippery and can dodge your skill shots, but if you have a Pyke, Thresh, Nautilus, Alistar, Leona, the likes of vel'koz, Karthus, Lux, and Brand can capitalize on lockdown probably much better. The challenge is, the risks of playing a mage in bot lane were still far greater than the rewards. Not having a consistent physical damage threat late game could make teamfights more hazardous if the enemy team had a BP frontline or when trying to take out bulky objectives like a 20k HP Baron or Elder Drake. In the grand scheme of things, it was still more prudent for you to play an ADC on average, with mages being intended for situational team comp balance or if in the event you were looking to free up your support to roam. In that case, what changed between then and now? I would wager it's a combination of both mages not only being better in bot lane, but noticeably worse in mid lane, believe it or not. The thing most responsible for the rise of mage bot laners would have to be the disproportionate advantage role quests gave to the class in comparison to ADCs. What I mean by that is, when Season 16 came around, the mid lane role quest ended up providing greater benefit to other champions over mages, meanwhile the bot lane role quest ended up providing greater benefit to mages over marksmen. Recapping what the two quests are, when mages complete their role quests, they get 8% bonus AD and ability power, while their tier 2 boots get upgraded to tier 3. While these are beneficial, don't get me wrong, neither stat boost is of consequential import to mages as it is to assassins or other melee champions. For example, Locke, Silas, Yasuo, Zed, Katarina, Akali, and Yone, to name a few, can weaponize tier 3 boots and the boost in adaptive force more efficiently and quickly, whereas mages can only really capitalize on that towards the mid to late game. Down in bot lane, upon completion of the role quest, you get 300 gold flat, 2 bonus gold per minion, and 40 bonus gold per takedown. Not to mention, you now have an additional item slot courtesy of boots no longer occupying one. How mages benefit from this more than marksmen pertains to the power scaling difference between the two. Generally, marksmen are characterized by a passable if not strong early game and incredibly strong late game. However, it's offset by them having the weakest mid game of any class. You might be scratching your heads as to how a champion can have a decent early and strong late game, but a weak mid game. Easy explanation. In the early game, champions do not have access to all their abilities, and said abilities are gatekept by long cooldowns and/or limited resource pool. Meanwhile, auto attacks, while slow and lacking any crit rate so far, are consistent and costless all the same. Once you transition to the mid game, which by Prevailing Wisdom's definition would be between level 9 and 13, around the time where most people complete their first item or two, abilities have now reached a point where their base damage far exceeds the DPS of auto attacks, especially in a contest of front-loaded pressure. Furthermore, their cooldowns and costs are faster and more manageable now. By and large, abilities scale linearly. For every bit of attack damage or ability power you give to abilities, you get an equal return in damage. Auto attacks, on the other hand, scale exponentially, not just dealing more damage with offense, but scaling through attack frequency and then scaling through crit damage, effectively more than doubling the DPS of each attack. What this ultimately means is, ability casters outscale marksmen by 1 to 2 items, and then once you get to 3 to 4 items, marksmen begin to outpace most champions in the game in sheer potential damage. All that being said, mages are the one class that can reasonably keep up with them even late game. The bot lane role quest ended up benefiting mages more than marksmen by way of it providing an extreme spike in gold generation, letting mages reach their 2 to 3 item power spike to then contribute more than AD carries can with the same amount. When looking at the roster of AP bot laners, nearly all of them have enough wave clear to essentially force bot lane into a handshake, whereby both laners take turns pushing the wave back and forth and focus entirely on farm. Provided they're playing correctly, there's not a whole lot you can do against a mage bot lane if they choose not to participate. They could just hard shove wave and then chill until the wave pushes back to them. With how far back they stand, even an engaged support will need to commit dangerously far to go after them, and with the wave pushing into them, the AD carry will be fighting a losing trade if they follow through on it. Said ability to hard push wave also provides the support with an opportunity to roam around the map. Marksmen fare considerably worse in a 1v2 situation due to their lower range and wave clear, making it easier for the enemy bot lane to crash a wave under their tower and maybe force a dive. By contrast, mages prevent that from happening altogether by hard shoving the wave, keeping things in a neutral state. For example, a single double cast Tino from Seraphine is enough to insta-kill the backline wave and bring the melee minions down low enough to where she can beat drop to finish them up. The only marksman who comes even remotely close to matching that kind of wave clear is Sivir. In that situation, even if you have like an Alistar, Thresh, or Leona, there really isn't much you can do, since again, if you try to attack Seraphine, you have to do so while dealing with the wave pushing towards you. It's just an uncomfortable game state to make place. All the while, her bard support or whomever is causing havoc around the map while she's sitting comfortably. Upon attaining the role quest, while both the mage and marksman receive the same cash advance, because of the aforementioned scaling disparity, a mage with 1 to 2 items measurably outpressures a marksman with 1 to 2 items. Not only is their wave clear even stronger now, but inevitably when a fight breaks out around an objective, a 2-item Sintra, Hui, vel'koz, Seraphine, Karthus, Victor will effortlessly pump out more damage and utility for their team than a 2-item Caitlyn, Xayah, Jinx, Twitch. It's not even close. In other words, you get more out of your bot laner if they're on a mage than a marksman in the mid game, which can come off more appealing with how early to mid game centric League has become. One other thing is that, across the entire champion roster, base stats afford more armor per level than magic resist. By level 18, just about everyone is sitting on at least 100 base armor, although their magic resist is only 50 or so at best. Reason being, there are more sources of physical damage in this game than magic. Minions do physical, towers do physical, monsters do physical, all auto attacks even on mages are physical, and of course the naturally higher damage output of auto attacks. Therefore, magic damage ends up hurting more in the long run unless you build magic resist. That's another aspect of marksmen having a weak mid-game. Their DPS has yet to outstrip the rate at which base armor keeps a champion durable, whereas mages can really start to hurt when they have 200 AP and you only have 40 MR. Items don't really help in this department either. Despite there being a varied selection of magic resist purchases in the game, again because of how much more ubiquitous physical damage is over magic, building MR is pretty inefficient unless the enemy team has like 2.5 plus AP on their team or more. Most magic resist items offer very little value beyond the defense they provide, and a great number of them are honestly kind of gold inefficient. On the other hand, armor items are much more gold efficient and provide far more utility than just armor. For instance, Thornmail comes with grievous wounds, making it good for not just dealing with physical damage but any champion who heals a lot, and then the passive can supplement your damage output, albeit marginally. So in addition to defense, it gives you offense. Another example is Randuin's. Not only does it give you a massive chunk of health and armor, and it nerfs crit damage by 30%, which is pretty overpowered, but you get access to an AoE 2 seconds 70% slow, massive in the mid to late game for either chasing or peeling. Now look at MR items. Spirit Visage gives you bonus healing and shielding. Helpful, especially if you're playing a sustained champion, but it's just tank stats at the end of the day. Force of Nature, same thing. A ridiculous amount of MR and even some tempo, but ultimately it's just tank stats. Kaine Grukran literally is just tank stats. They provide you no utility or anything of the sort, making purchasing them impractical for general usage. The same applies to armor options for DPS champions. Death's Dance and Zhonya's Hourglass completely overshadow Maul, Malmortius, and Banshee's Veil in applications. Yes, the former two prioritize physical damage, but they can provide general survivability even against AP champs or the like, whereas Maul is pretty useless even against non-magic damage, and Banshee's Spell Shield can be easily popped by a poke option. Then of course there's Guardian Angel, which is an armor item marksman can take, whereas Mercurial Scimitar is too situational and honestly not even that good for dealing with magic damage. In essence, mage bot laners, particularly if they're the only source of AP on the enemy team, can maintain their high damage output by virtue of countermeasures being suboptimal against them. Finally, the last major reason for the rise of mage bot laners is that thanks to the extra item slot made available to them, they actually outscale marksmen, inconceivable as that sounds. Recall what I said earlier, where at 0 items and before level 6, marksmen generally beat mages in a head-on confrontation. Then at 1 to 2 items around level 9 to 13, mages beat out marksmen through a more meaningful power spike. However, by 3 to 4 items, marksmen can start to turn things around against mages, since by that point they'll have attained 100% crit rate and can start doing the equivalent of ability damage with every auto attack. By 5 items, aka full build if you include boots, both mages and marksmen are about even in strength for different reasons. But due to 6 items now being made available, mages beat marksmen. Upon reaching full crit on a marksman, you effectively plateau in strength and instead commit your last item to some kind of defensive option like Bloodthirster, maybe GA, what have you. The same applies to their now 6th option. There's no benefit to speccing for more crit when you cap out at 100. Mages, however, continue to get stronger. A 6 item slot affords them so much more potential pressure. Prior to Season 16, 1000 AP was only achievable on practically just Vhagar. Now though, we see tons of mages getting 1000 AP. That's because Death Cap exists. Death Cap allows mages to exploit an additional item slot a lot more by squeezing more value out of the extra 80 to 120 AP they obtain, further pushing their DPS to the point where a single ability can straight up one-shot people. You might be able to face tank a 700 AP Syndra combo or a Karthus or Xerath ultimate. But what if they have 1000 AP? At that point, they start doing enough DPS to one-shot you thrice in a single rotation, let alone once, meaning even if you have a Lulu shielding you with everything she's got, if Hui lands all his abilities on you, he can blast you and by extension the rest of your team, instantly winning the fight right then and there. Remember, mages have way more range, upfront burst, and AoE damage than marksmen do. It doesn't matter if you have 480, 3.0 attack speed, and 100 crit, if you can't walk up without losing 90% of your HP from a single ability. There you have it. Through a combination of role quests and poor item selection against magic damage, and also the circumstantial advantages afforded to the team from being able to handle a 1v2 lane at the support role, they made it so mages are functionally the superior option to AD carries now. Not to imply marksmen are completely unviable and you're griefing if you pick them, it's just that mages can capitalize on the current systems governing League of Legends much better than marksmen can. Where it's simply 1 to 2 champions with a disproportionately higher win rate over an entire class, then you more than likely can just chalk it up to those champions being overpowered. But when a dozen champions of a single class all have a 1 to 2% higher win rate than another class, that's when you know the factors are systemic. It's hard to say whether this is a good or bad thing. Adding mages to bot lane present more opportunities for the rest of the team in draft, where you can now go AD top, jungle, and mid without worrying about the enemy team stacking armor. And if you're autofilled, mages are less mechanically intensive to play while still contributing a lot. I would much rather an autofill ADC play Ziggs where if all else fails, they can just chuck Qs and E's over and over, then burst time Kai'Sa and run it down. At the same time, with bot lane being really the only place where marksmen are allowed to exist, being pushed out of their own role seems a bit unhealthy as well. What do you guys think though? Do you like mage bot laners, or do you think this is a problem? You're welcome to share in the comments down below. That'll be all for today though, so if you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars and join my Discord server, and check out my other discussion videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.